fellas. Notoriously, I get these prediction shows completely wrong, but I'm the host. You are the experts. A lot of pressure on both of you.
You might have got last year, right?
Well, I do pick Liverpool most years.
Well, that's right. You're going to eventually get one, right? It's going to stick.
Well, shall we look at my previews to start with things off?
Let's do
my top 4 predictions, as mentioned, I am notoriously wrong. However, you can pretty much take these to the bank. Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea and Manchester United. Okay, we'll get to your predictions shortly as well, Ian, but 18 points separated the Reds from City last year, and that was with the Reds taking their foot off the gas late in the campaign after they clinched. Do you see any way the Reds take a step back this year? It's been a very quiet off-season for them in the transfer window.
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, they've been relatively quiet transfer windows. So Klopp buys in who he wants to buy in. He doesn't go out and just spend for the sake of it like some teams do. I think they'll push the same way. But again, that 18-point gap, like you said, they took their foot off a bit, but other teams will be wanting to close that, and they're desperate. And as you've seen in the transfer window so far, I think Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal to an extent, Man City again. I think it's going to be a lot tighter than some hope, but I hope your predictions become right.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be 18 points this year. I really don't. And then one of the big factors is, too, is not really come into Liverpool in the last few years, is they've stayed relatively healthy. And what happens is some of the major players, Van Dijk, some of these major guys get injured during the season. I mean, it could happen to anybody, but I think it's a major concern for them as well, as they've been very healthy.
There's been people commenting and suggesting this could be a dynasty in the making. A very young team, a dynamic team, but often it's hard for these teams to continue with quiet windows. We saw Sir Alex Ferguson always bring in 1 or 2 players in every off-season, no matter how good United were. Jurgen Klopp says, we will not defend our crown, we will attack our crown, which bodes very, very well, but that's easy to say in the pre-season.
Well, he's got to keep that same intensity up as he demands all the time. But when you have the end of the season, you're starting a new one so short after, he wants to make sure that they come out of the gates quickly and with the same intensity as they ended the season last year, or how they played last year. So he's absolutely right, and it's not going to be as easy as you think, because of when you're the title holders, it's a different animal altogether.
Gini Wijnaldum could be off to Barcelona as well, but there are some kids coming through the academy. We saw that last year. Ryan Brewster's back at the time being, away from his loan deal. Is that enough, do you think, to add some freshness to the squad?
If Wijnaldum goes, they need to replace him. But they can't replace him with a youth player. These youth players, Curtis Jones, Nico Williams, Ryan Brewster, if he's there, the rumour that he's going to go, they're talking 20 million for him, which is incredible. I wouldn't personally want to see him go. But if Gini does go, they need to replace him with a top class player who's going to step in, or at least compete for a starting spot, because Wijnaldum over the last 2 years has arguably been the most reliable player in the midfield, and I think losing him, I personally don't want to see him go, but I'd love to see who he brings in, because we need a world-class player to replace him.
Well, if the gap closes, you can look at Man City as being the big rivals, of course. Kevin De Bruyne yesterday named the PFA Player of the Year, and he puts it all down to his gaffer, Pep Guardiola.
Well, I think most of the time he just let me be me. I think we speak often about the team, but in a lot of sense he knows when he gives the orders what the team has to do, that I will listen. But then on the other side, he gives me a lot of freedom. I don't know why, it's just the way it goes between us. And he knows in one way, I always put the team up front, and then obviously if I can help myself, I'm going to do that. But he knows that I want the team to win. And if the team win, I will gain from it. So I think in that sense, he feels perfectly fine, and he trusts me completely in this phase.
Yeah, what a player he is. Craig, here's your top 4 predictions. I love how you have squeezed in the Gunners there at Chelsea's expense. But Man City, I think it's going to be the consensus for being 1 or 2 in most people's lists.
Well, yeah, but they got some issues there too. I mean, how long does Pep go? He's got a contract out next June, I believe. His contract's up. So they sort that out during the season, because the longer that goes, it's going to weigh heavy on the squad too, and then also on future signings and a disruption if they don't get that done. So I do have them as second, but they do potentially have some issues there. And then also Arsenal, I'm going to take them in front of Chelsea in the top four only because, not because of Chelsea, who they're signing. It's just that I think that it's not going to be as easy for Frank Lampard to put that group together as quickly as they need to be before they find themselves too far behind to catch the top four.
Maybe one name that no one's mentioning as a contender per se is Manchester United. Now, the window hasn't closed yet, and these preview shows are always difficult because there's still a lot of big names moving to big clubs before, October the 4th, I think the deadline is. So, but right now it's been a quiet off-season for United. Sancho might arrive, he might not arrive at some point, but where do you think they might finish there, Humi, and what are your thoughts on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
Ole, when he came in, it was sunshine and rainbows, and everyone thought because they were struggling so much, they came in, they've picked up a head of steam. But I still think there's some issues if they get the right Pogba playing. We know how good he is, but how consistent is he? Bruno Fernandes came in, breath of fresh air, taking chances, scoring goals, penalties, creating chances, brilliant. But Marcus Rashford tailed off. Do you rely on Martial up front? How good's Greenwood going to be? How much game time is he going to get?
Do they pick up another striker before the deadline?
Ideally, if I was them, I'd be looking to pick up a striker, not a winger. Like Sancho's an incredible talent, but for 100 million, you could get in somebody else who's probably more seasoned, proven goal scorers. They got rid of Lukaku. They didn't replace him properly. They relied on Martial. For me, I'd bring in, like I was saying to you off screen, a Cavani-type player, an Icardi. Couldn't get a game for PSG at the end of last year. They're proven goal scorers.
Well, let's look at your top four predictions and see where you have United, and there you have it. You have actually Chelsea finishing above them. £230 million they've spent so far. A lot of money going out the door at Chelsea, of course. Last year they had the transfer ban, but some big names and some very interesting names coming to Chelsea for this season. But that's a big turnover. You look at Kai Havertz, for example. What a player, very expensive player indeed. But that's a big turnaround. It will take time to bed in, will it not? You hear me?
I think having brought in so many young players, I think it might take them a little less time than people think, because they're just wanting to go out and express themselves. You think back in the day when they brought in those 500 million in one season, when they brought in Shevchenko, Crespo, Ferreira, Carvalho, all them. They brought in all these players.
I forgot about Crespo, that's right. Yeah.
But they brought in all these players, and they were all superstars in their own right. So it took them a little bit of time. At the start of seasons, okay, they went on to win it eventually. But that was under Mourinho. Under Frank, he's got a lot of kids, and he showed last season how well he can get them to gel. And they overachieved last year, if in honesty. So this year, I think bringing in guys they're established players, but they're still very, very young. Like Ziyech, I'm really looking forward to seeing. I think he's very Riyad Mahrez-esque, the way he plays. Sets goals up, scores great goals, and he's exciting to watch. Timo Werner, I wanted at Liverpool. I was desperate to get him at Liverpool, but he's come in there. Then they've still got Abraham, they've still got Kante if he stays, they've still got Mason Mount. They've got that many young players there who have that experience. I think they will push.
It'll be a different world, though, for Frank, won't it? I mean, a little bit more pressure, too, because last year with the transfer ban, dealt well with the youngsters, bringing them through. Now, all of a sudden, he's got these great players coming together, and his expectations on him goes sky high.
You ushered in Frank Lampard once upon a time at West Ham, many, many years ago.
He ushered me in.
When you saw this, 17-year-old kid coming through the system, did you know that guy's going to be a great manager one day?
No, but you certainly look at certain characters in the game, even at young levels, that are lifers, guys that are going to go right through the youth system, teams, and into management as well. He also, comes from good pedigree. His dad was involved as well, and in coaching, he was an assistant at West Ham when I was there. So he comes from a good background. His uncle Harry Redknapp. So he's learned from a lot of good people, and I think he's a solid individual as well. Is going to be able to deal with the pressures because he knows all about it.